So today we're going to take a look at Sela from the game Star Trek Captain's Chair. Now, Sela is, of course, one of the 6 captains from this game. Sela is a character from Star Trek The Next Generation, who has kind of a complicated character origin. It's played by Denise Crosby, who played Tasha Yar in the first season, but then Tasha Yar got sent back in time. But she was sent back in time by like an alternate universe Captain Picard, and then in the past she hooked up with the Romulan and had Sela, who ended up becoming Romulan commander, and it's weird. But she is basically the Romulan representative in the game, and her deck features a bunch of Romulans in it from the Next Generation era of Star Trek, and not necessarily characters that were actually associated with Sela. Take a look at the board here and start off with this. We'll see that on the basic side, she maxes out at 5 points for all of the tracks there, and 4 on the advanced side. So she doesn't get a lot of points off of focus from the tracks there. We'll look at her missions here. Romulan Might is the base mission. The goal is have 6 influence and 6 military. That's not real hard to pull off, so that's one of the simpler ones to get. The reward is enlisted development and find an attack. On the advanced side, that is 4 points for Romulan Might. The reunification plot, which is 4 points. Goal is have 4 Vulcans in play. Now there is 1 Vulcan in her deck, so you're going to have to pick up the others elsewhere. The reward is gain 3 influence, draw a card for each shady you have in play, and you may free play an incident and may junk a card from the market. Then the Duras plot, which is 1 point, kind of 1 point. Have 1 or more Klingon on the same ship that has cloak. The reward, gain 1 military for each cloak in play, gain 2 glory from the supply, not the Stardate card, for each Klingon in play. Dismiss 1 cloak and all beamed Klingons. So the reason I say it's technically 1 point is because of this here. You're getting 2 glory from the supply for each Klingon, which means each Klingon that you have is going to get you an additional 2 points, because the glory is 2 points. So this will be a minimum of 3 points you should be getting off of this. And notice they're not coming from the Stardate card, it's coming from the supply, so this is not like speeding the game up. And the more Klingons you have, the more this will go up there. You could get this pretty easily to like 5 or 7 points off of that one. So before we get into the deck, the other thing we're going to notice here, Sela has 5 ships. So yeah, a lot of ships. 3 of these basically come from the same Warbird model there, that Deredix class Warbird. The other 2 coming from Star Trek Nemesis. We'll look at Sela, the captain. She has Romulan, human, and shady traits. Deserves all 3 of those. She has 4 away teams, which is the lowest amount of away teams of any of the captains. Now, she has more ships to make up for that, and she has a lot of ways to be able to pick up ships. So as far as like going out to like the neutral locations and stuff, you're gonna have to be doing that with ships, because you've only got a handful of the away teams there. She has a reaction. After attacking your opponent, gain 1 dilithium or 1 latinum. An action activation. Discard either infiltrate or conquer and spend 3 latinum to scan for either Klingon, Vulcan, or Starfleet. And an end game. Score 1 for each of your attack cards, excluding cards with Romulan and Reman. All of the attack cards that are in Sela's deck are Romulan or Reman. So if you're going to get any on this, you're going to have to get them from the market. You're not going to get them, you don't get any just directly out of your deck. Now we'll take a look at her deployed ship, the IRW Goraxis. Now this is supposed to be her warbird that she commands. This name Garaxus actually came not from the show's canon on the screen, but actually from another card game. Interesting that they kind of picked up this kind of beta canon name there. Has Romulan and cloak traits, military skill, action play. Deploy this ship. You may send an away team to a location, ignoring any opponent's ship. This is going to be the default play action for most of the ships in this deck. The activations are spend 1 dilithium to warp this ship, discard a card to beam a card here. These are going to be pretty standard on all of the ships in here. This being kind of the flagship, has the promote a person from your hand to duty officer. And the next thing we're going to see that is interesting is that she has 3 cards that start in the discard pile. So instead of these being in her hand, they're just right over there to the discard pile. Now that does mean you get into the reserve deck pretty quick. Her reserve deck is a little bit bigger to counter that. But the first time you get into the reserve deck, you actually have these 3 cards will shuffle into the deck and show up the next time around. So Reman's an ally with telepath, security, and Reman traits. The play effect, put a card on top of your deck to send an away team to a location. Then either log this card or your opponent may draw a card. If it's worth it to you to be able to get an away team out there, then this can be pretty good there. All of your ships can send one out. Like, they don't warp immediately, but they do send an away team out to a location right away. So you don't necessarily have to have this. You have to decide if the effect is good there, if you want to keep around and keep using it. Though it may be a point in the game that you want to just log this and get it out of your hand. Although there is another card that lets you do some stuff with a Reman. So it's worth hanging around for that reason. IRW Terex. This is the warbird from the TNG episode Pegasus that was kind of getting into things with the Enterprise. Romulan and cloak traits with a science skill, and it has what are going to be the 3 things that you will see on the ships here with Sela. The action play, deploy the ship and send an away team to a location, ignoring any opponent's ship. And the activations is spending 1 dilithium to warp or discarding a card to beam a card there. 3 warbirds here will have the same basic effects, with the Garaxus having the duty officer effect, and they do have different skill on each of them. Utilize. This is kind of a common card here that almost everybody has. Gain 1 dilithium and 2 dilithium for each controlled location you have in play, or gain 1 specialty track for each matching skill icon you have in play, excluding beamed cards. And now you may have to hit this once to get some dilithium because it could take a little bit for dilithium to going, but you've really got to move these tracks up to be able to score on there because you just have such a low number on them. I mean, 5 on the basic and 4 on the advanced. You've got enough of your ships and locations that will have skills on them that you can push these up pretty well, and that's really what you need to be doing with it there. Once you get the lithium rolling in, you just need to use this to push this up every time. And remember, one of your basic things is to get this up above 6 here, so you want to go ahead and do that pretty early into it. Now going into rest of the basic deck here that does not start off in the discard pile. We'll have a pair of planets here. Romulus with military and influence skills. The action is take control of this location. The control, you may free play a ship, so you get to put this out there, and there's a good chance you'll have a ship in hand, so this can effectively play for free. The activation is if you have an away team here, draw a card. If you have 3 or more total away teams on 1 or more controlled locations, draw a card. Even with just the 4 away teams, it's still worth having one on here to be able to get the card draw. Being able to go through your deck is really, really important. I don't know if you're going to get 3 on locations very often to be able to get the second card draw. It's probably just going to end up being the 1. Remus with attack and Riemann traits. Yes, this is a location that is an attack. The action play, take control of this card. The attack control, force your opponent to discard a card. So the first time you drop this out there, get them to discard a card. This really doesn't go back into your deck, so you just gotta have them discard a card once. The resupply, gain 1 dilithium. You may discard a Riemann to gain an additional 2. And this is what I'm talking about, that this right here may be good for that, to be able to get you some more dilithium in there early. It may just be more worth keeping Riemanns around just to get the lithium, because Zara is the ship from Face of the Enemy that Deanna Troy ended up on, disguised as a Romulan. Romulan and cloak traits with influence skill. Once again, the same effects there as the Terex. The Terex and the Kazara are pretty much identical, aside from the skill icon on them. Was surprised that the character Commander Torith from this didn't end up in the deck there. She seems like she would be a pretty obvious fit for Sela's deck. Sub-Commander Torul, an engineer with Romulan traits. This is a character from Deep Space Nine that the Romulans sent her over to them when they lent the cloaking device for them to use on the Defiant. She's played by Martha Hackett, who is much more well known for playing Seska on Star Trek Voyager. The play effect, draw a card. You may discard a card to draw a cloak from your discard pile. So you can use her to draw a card and pull a cloak out of your discard pile, which is essentially pulling a ship back out of your discard pile. So a dismissed ship can potentially come back into play a lot quicker there. That's really a pretty good effect. Her table reaction is, after putting a cloak into play, gain 1 latinum. There's not a whole lot that needs latinum on this deck. I mean, I guess her ability there is, and there's like one other thing besides that. I think this draw effect of being able to pull your ships back out of your discard pile is such a big thing that most of the time I'm not really making her duty officer. General Movar with Romulan and Ops traits. This is going to go back to Sela's first major appearance, and going to be one of the few characters in this deck that actually interact with Sela, and the only one that actually takes orders from her. Action play, discard an attack and spend 1 dilithium to scan for Shady. The resupply, draw a card for every 2 Shady you have in play with a maximum 4 cards. And the activation, to take an incident to gain 1 dilithium. If you do, you may free play an attack. Movar is definitely in this deck. And he exists. That's about all I can say about him. He's not great. I guess if you start getting a bunch of Shadies, maybe you could get him in the duty officer so that you can like draw some cards. But I don't know. Disruptor rifles, Romulan weapon and attack. The action attack. Discard a Romulan. If you do up to twice, remove an opponent away team from a neutral location where you have a ship. Gain 1 glory for each away team removed. You may junk a card from the market. So you got to discard a Romulan. Hey, that guy right there looks like he's pretty good for discard right there. Action play, gain 1 military, junk a card from the market. Both of these are pretty good. This only moves it up 1, but hey, moving up 1 is something there. But disruptor rifles, yeah, they've got a pretty good reason to be around. Infiltrate. Number of the decks have this directive. You may warp up to 3 of your ship with cloak. All of your 5 ships that come in this deck have cloak, so that's pretty good for all of those. Action play, discard 2 cards and spend 1 dilithium to gain a person, cargo, or ally. There are some very specific ones that you want to try to get there, and that can help you grab those. So once again, that could be a pretty good card for you. Now we'll go into the reserves. We'll start off with Tomalak, a Romulan with attack traits. Tomalak was kind of a recurring character that showed up early in the Next Generation when they were kind of setting up the Romulans as kind of a recurring adversary. Made one appearance later on the show. He was played by Andreas Katsulas, who is much more well known as Ambassador Jakar from Babylon 5. Attack play. Spend 2 dilithium to gain a ship. Dismiss all of your opponent's Starfleet duty officers. If any were dismissed, force them to discard a card. Now, obviously, this is going to be better against the Starfleet captains who have more Starfleet people in their decks to be duty officer, particularly Picard, where all of his people are Starfleet. Although anyone could pick up a Starfleet out of the market. I think you're mainly doing this to gain the ship. Activation effects. Spend 1 dilithium to draw a ship from your discard pile. Once again, another way to just be able to pull ships out of the discard and bring them back into play so they can be dismissed and come right back in and not have to cycle your deck through again. And then a second activation, discard a card to draw an attack from your discard pile. So if you feel like pulling out an attack instead of a ship, you could do that as well. I usually like this effect on here for stuff, but he's not bad as duty officer. T'Pel, an ambassador with Romulan, Vulcan, and spy traits. This is the ambassador from the episode Data's Day, where we thought she was the Vulcan ambassador, but really she was working for the Romulans. This is the one Vulcan that you have in the deck if you are working on the reunification plot. Action play requires 4 influence. Spend 1 latinum to trigger the control operation of one of your controlled locations and draw a card. If you have a location that has a control operation that's really good, that can be something to use. This is the only other thing that uses latinum out of the deck. Her passive is increase your hand size by 1, and I usually tend to keep her around as duty officer for that. Being able to just increase the hand size is really, really good. We have 1 incident in this deck, Energy Drain, which is, of course, -2 points, like all incidents are. Action play, spend 2 dilithium to return this card. If you have an engineer in play, gain an action. This is going to be the same as Energy Drain from the common incident deck. Conquer a directive with a wild skill on it. Action play, you may discard a person and take an incident to send 2 away teams to a location where you have a ship. You may dismiss a ship to gain a person, ship, or ally. When you're bringing on incidents to do this, sometimes you need to get the 2 out there pretty bad. You do have a lot of ships, so dismissing a ship to gain something there could be good if you really like one of those things that are out there. So pretty much anything besides a cargo. Confiscate. This is a common directive for the non-Starfleet captains. Action play, spend 4 dilithium to gain a ship. Or another action play to spend 2 dilithium to gain a cargo. Or just a play to gain a latinum. Really picking up the ships with this or the cargo can be good. Tomalak can get you a ship cheaper, where it's only 2 dilithium to get it with him, but sometimes Tomalak isn't there and you may need to use Confiscate. It's also good for grabbing cargo. Now going into the developments, we'll start off with Proconsul Neural, a person with communication, Imperial, and Romulan traits with an influence skill, influence focus, and the development cost of 2 dilithium. This is the proconsul that was working with Sela in reunification. This is the other character here that actually does interact with Sela on the show. Action play. Find a card. You may free play an incident. You may discard a Romulan to promote this card to duty officer. His reaction after you take control of a location, discard a card to gain an action. So that can be pretty good there. I find this first one to be really great. Being able to just grab a specific card. Now remember that find can get it out of your deck, your discard pile, or the reserve deck. You're probably through your reserve deck by the time you get this guy, but you could grab him earlier. If you're able to get, Romulan Might pretty early, you can enlist a development and grab this guy. Now you can do a lot of things. You could grab any type of card out of there. You can just grab an incident if you just want to really get rid of it. Since you could free play it, basically keep it to just one action there. Denatra, a person with Romulan traits, with military focus and a development cost of 2 dilithium. This is a character from Star Trek Nemesis that ended up helping out Picard there at the end of the film, because she didn't seem like the type that would really be helping Sela out there a lot. Play effect, draw 3 cards. For each, spend 1 dilithium or discard it. Refresh a ship. Okay, this is pretty good, because just digging 3 cards out of your deck really pushes your deck through there. Really want to keep one. There's many in there that may be worth spending the 1 dilithium to keep. And even if you don't end up using that card on that turn, you can leave it out there to your hand for the next turn, so you don't even have to use it right then. That makes it a good way to be able to just dig through that, find the cards that you're after. Refreshing a ship can also be good. Just make sure you're doing things in the right order so you can actually exhaust the ship before and then refresh it. That also works great that if you deployed a ship, since your ships do not warp when they deploy, that would refresh them and let you then warp them on the same turn that you played them. So that would be another good effect for you. For activations, discard a card to warp a ship. So that would be another way that you could warp a ship on the turn that you play it. Or dismiss a ship to draw 2 cards. You basically have her sitting out there. If you're willing to just dismiss ships, you can get card draw. Usually you're not wanting to just dismiss the ships a lot, so that's a very niche use there, I think. Shinzon, a person with Imperial attack, Romulan and human traits. He is worth 3 points, has a development cost of 3 dilithium. So this is another character from Star Trek Nemesis. This is like a clone of Picard that was younger than Picard and played by Jonathan Hardy before he was famous. Ended up kind of being the villain of that film. Weirdly, Denatra kind of works with Picard against Shinzon. So very strange to have them in the same deck together. And these are both pretty, honestly, pretty removed from Sela. So they seem a weird inclusion. I think they were just trying to get Nemesis in here. Attack play. Your opponent takes an incident. You may spend 2 Latinum to scan for synthetic. You may free play the scimitar from your hand. Yeah, we'll have the scimitar in here in a bit, but that's his ship. Resupply. Log a Romulan from your hand or discard pile if able. If you do, gain 1 military. That's weird there, because you're just having to log Romulans just like crazy there. I don't know. Do you want to keep him as your... I mean, maybe if you're done with all the Romulans, but you're at a point that you're gonna have to, you got other people and the cargoes and stuff in here. I mean, you don't want to get into where you're having to log your ships. I don't know. Attack activation, gain 1 military. Your opponent takes an incident. Alright, so that's probably the trade-off for that. I suspect you're only going to leave him out there for a few turns and then get him out of the duty officer position and move in someone else. I can't see how you would keep him in there very long. The IRW Valdor, this is Denatra's ship. Probably partially included because it's a different looking ship from the other Romulan ships. This has attack, Romulan, and cloak traits with a wild skill worth 4 points and development cost of 5 dilithium. The play action, deploy this ship. You may send an away team to a location, ignoring any opponent's ship. That is pretty standard. The activation, you may spend 1 dilithium to warp this ship, and you may beam a card here. So you get to do both. Warp and beam a card there if you want to. The attack activation, spend 2 dilithium to draw a card, and force your opponent to dismiss a ship. So that can give you card draw and dismiss opponent's ships, which really messes around with their plans. That's pretty good. The scimitar, an attack, reman, and cloak traits with military skill were 4 points with 5 dilithium development cost. This is Shinzon's ship that his card was referencing. Once again, the Valdor was fighting with the Enterprise against the Scimitar. Weird seeing them in the same deck with each other. Action play. Find a Romulan and destroy the found card. Beam a card to Remus. If you do both, deploy this ship. Okay, so yeah, that's a lot to just deploy this ship. I mean, destroying a Romulan card is just getting it completely out of the game. And also, if you beam a card to Remus, there's no way to get a card out of Remus. So once it's there, it's there. Now going back into it, it's probably the Romulan cards you're going to want to get rid of. It's going to be some of these earlier ones here, like Movar. He is one that's definitely worth doing it. Maybe later in the game you don't need to rules card draw as much. Also got things like Disruptor Rifle. That is a Romulan. Maybe you could do with that. Those would be the ones I would recommend. Anything from the reserve, or maybe even like Tomalak if you're not using him. Maybe Tapel. You really don't want to go into the ones from your development because they're actually worth points. And when you remove it from the game, those points go away. So definitely you're wanting to get rid of those early Romulans. Because this isn't logging, this is destroying. You can warp the ship pretty easy, but let's take a look at these 2 attack activations. Attack activation, which requires 7 military. Log an opponent location. Gain 1 glory for each skill icon the logged card has. Dismiss this ship. Just making your opponent get those be logged. That's rough. But also activation, take control of this ship's neutral location. So you could warp it to a location and then end up just taking control of it if you have the 9 military on there. Probably use one of your other cards to warp it, so go ahead and deploy this. Then the next turn you can just warp it to a location and then just take control of that without having to go through the process of actually securing it. That could really do a lot, but it's just every time you want to bring it out. I mean, anytime you do one of these activations here, this one when their location gets logged, that just the ship dismisses. And obviously if the ship is at a location, you take control of it, the ship gets dismissed, and it takes a lot to bring it back. So that's why the play effect here to deploy it is so harsh. And lastly, forced singularity, because we know that the Romulan warbirds use a forced black hole essentially to power their ships. This has Romulan anomaly and ongoing traits with a science focus and development cost of dismissed 1 deployed ship. Action play. You may discard a card to find an engineer ops. Junk a card from the market. Spend 2 dilithium to deploy this card. So this is one of those cargoes that you can deploy. The passive effect requires 3 military. You may have an additional person on duty. Having 2 duty officers is great because these can start combined together and get a lot of effects that way. The other activation is discard an engineer to draw 2 cards and put one of them on the top of your deck. It's a good effect, but you gotta have an engineer, and you don't have a lot of those. But a pretty good card to grab in there just for that passive effect. Okay, so looking at all of these, you can see that Romulan Might is pretty easy to get. Let's just get this up to 6. The reunification plot, you've got to find 3 other Romulan. You got to find 3 other Vulcans in there. That's not too hard to do. You've got things that can help you find those. And kind of the same with the Klingons there. If you're going to go for like Duras plot, I would get a ship. That's got to be a ship that has cloaks. So there's not a lot of those in the common deck. So you're going to have to use one of your ships to stick them on. But probably stick one off on like a controlled location somewhere and just start putting Klingons on it. And then once it looks like you're late into the game, go ahead and do that. But go ahead and get all the Klingons on it that you can, because if you can even get 2 or 3, that can be a pretty good point swing for you. So all of these are not real difficult to find there. You gotta remember that she's got a way here to find Klingons, Vulcans, and Starfleet on that. The Starfleet, I mean, it doesn't hurt to get Starfleet because the Starfleet cards tend to be pretty good ones, but you're really wanting to get those you're really wanting to get those Klingons or Vulcans. So let's take a look at some of the common cards that work really well for her. We're going to start with the locations. Free Cloud and Varix 3 are both shady, so those work into a lot of the effects that we have. On the people, we're going to look at attacks that are not Romulan or Reman to work for that effect there. That'll be B4, Harry Mudd, Moriarty, and Captain Dorg. Those all work good for that. As far as Klingon people, we have once again Captain Dorg, Lursa, and Ambassador Kamarag. We have some Vulcans on here. Talok has an attack, but he has Vulcan and Romulan traits, so doesn't work for that. But Talok and Sakana are both on here as Vulcans. As far as the shadies, we've got Admiral Pressman who's in there, but also Captain Dorg, Lursa, Moriarty, and Harry Mudd. So quite a few shadies in there. Dorg in particular, he's Klingon attack and shady, and all of those are really great for you. Going into the cargoes, the Horta is really good to pair along with Remus, because Remus always gains you 1 dilithium. So if you can get the science up to 4, which can be a little bit tricky because you don't have a lot of science skills in there, but if you can get the science up to 4 and get Horta in there, then you're essentially getting 3 every turn without having to discard a Reman. As far as attacks, you have Tribbles, Type 3 Disruptor, Tachyon Detection Grid, Mek'leth, Lurpa, and Salat. The Mek'leth also has a Klingon trait, and the Lurpa and the Salat are both Vulcan. The Salat from the promo pack actually helps you out quite a bit. As for the ships, you have the Dakir Cruiser, which is Vulcan, Katinga Battle Cruiser, which is Klingon. This Bird of Prey, I mainly bring up here because this is the one that has Cloak on it, and you have cards that let you find cloaks out of your discard, or warp ships that have cloaks. So if you're able to get this Bird of Prey, that's an additional ship that can do all the things that reference cloak. So it's like having another one of your own ships there. The Sona Battle Cruiser and the Kazon ship are both attack and shady. So these, once again, work well for you for multiple different things. For allies, the Aronson have Klingon traits. The Emerald Chain and the Lethians are both attack and shady. You can see a lot of the shadies also have attacks, so that's something you can kind of double up on in there. And then lastly, the encounters. Shakari is both attack and Vulcan, and with everyone this tends to be good, but the Koala is a wild card, and so it can count for like a Vulcan or a Klingon or something. And so that's a basic look at her here. Again, I think the strategies on this one is going to be using ships to help control planets, since you don't have a lot of away teams. Moving up your tracks is really important. more so than trying to get to the lithium early. Usually, if you're playing on the advanced, you can usually pull 2 of these off pretty easily there. And Sela's an interesting one. She plays a little bit different because of some of the things there, the smaller number of away teams, and having a lot of the cards start off into discard. Has her start kind of differently, but it is a fun play style, and she can actually be pretty good to work with there. So if you like this video and found it interesting, give it a thumbs up and a like. You can go down into the comments section and let me know what you think down there, and you can also subscribe to my channel and make sure you catch all the videos that I post so you don't miss anything. This is Jeremy with Point Extra G, and we'll see you around next time.